Chapter 61. Under siege, the crater had become a storm. Dust, light, and screens churned together until there was no horizon, no up or down, just chaos. Gunfire stuttered through the haze, flashes swallowed instantly by the cloud. Bash's HUD flickered from overload warnings to static. He could barely see 10 meters ahead, yet he didn't need to. Every scream in the comms told him enough. His team was being torn apart. The predator still hadn't moved. It stood on the ridge above its den, eyes glowing white, silent and deliberate, controlling everything below with unseen precision. Around it, the world obeyed. Dead things crawled again. Fallen wings beat once more. Bash fired until the pistol clicked empty, ejected the magazine, slammed another in, and kept firing. Nothing stayed dead, foe. Hour long, Rixer waded through rodents waist deep, each the size of a small child, their teeth flashing pale in the gloom. His hammer swung in wide arcs, each hit cracking bone and sending blood spraying. The ground shook from every impact, yet for every creature he crushed, 3 more replaced it, climbing his legs, clawing into the gaps of his armor. He roared, ripping one free, blood streaking down his forearm. "I can't hold them," Leora's voice cut across the comms. "Back, Rixer, drop." He barely heard her over the hiss of claws. She darted in from his flank, blades carving precise arcs through the swarm. Her movements were fast, but she was slowing. The glow of her mineral reinforcement was flickering, cracks spreading across her forearm guard. A rabbit lunged for her throat. He twisted, caught it midair, and stabbed both blades into its sides before kicking it away. Her shields broke with a brittle crack. One of the rodents seized her shoulder, dragging her sideways. Dark lunged in, slamming the half of his broken sword into the creature's spine. It shrieked, went limp, but 2 more replaced it immediately. He turned to cover her, blood already running down his temple. His visor was cracked through the center. One eye squinted against the dust. "They just keep coming," he yelled, parrying another set of claws. His sword shattered, leaving him with a jagged shard of metal. He used it anyway, stabbing wildly. Richter swung again, hammer meeting ground, splattering 2 beasts but throwing himself off balance. Claws raked down his back, slicing deep enough to R. Each flesh. He slammed an elbow into another attacker, teeth bared. Leora spun behind him, carving an opening. Up, he straightened, chest heaving, eyes wild. "If we stop moving, we die," she gasped. "Then we don't stop," he grunted. Blood streamed from his forearm, but he lifted the hammer again. They fought shoulder to shoulder, the swarm closing in. Above, the air was alive with wings. The shriek of the summoned birds blended with gunfire and the hiss of wind. Naire's rifle barked again and again, each burst sending streaks of blue energy into the sky. The recoil rattled her bones. She tracked targets through the blur, squeezing off precision shots that should have killed. But the moment one bird burst into feathers and ash, another formed from the same white light above it. Her barrel glowed orange. Steam rose from the vents on her weapon's side. She swore, yanked the cooling cartridge, and slammed in a fresh one. "Can't keep this up," she muttered. A shadow dropped from above. Talons raked her shoulder, treading the fabric and scoring the skin beneath. She spun, falling backward, firing point blank into the creature's chest. It disintegrated mid-air, but her shoulder burned where the claws had sunk through. "Naira!" Callan's voice echoed. She glanced right. Callan crouched behind a boulder, his bow moving in a constant rhythm. Draw, release, draw again. Every shot was a blur, but half of them veered off course in the gusts kicked up by the beating wings. He swore, drew another, and fired. It pierced a bird through the throat. The creature dissolved, reforming. Seconds later, "I'm burning through arrows," he called. "Then pick them back up." He laughed, breathless. "Kinda busy." Another bird swooped. He rolled, caught the motion, stabbed the creature with his arrow as it passed. Its screech rattled the air. A gust landed into both of them, throwing dust and feathers into their eyes. Callan hit the ground, coughing. Naire's rifle slipped from her hands, tumbling across the dirt. She dove after it, sliding on one knee, catching the weapon just as a bird slammed into her from the side. Her head snapped against the ground. Vision swam. She pressed the barrel to the bird's chest and fired. It vanished in a flash of blue, leaving her gasping. One lens of her visor shattered. They were bleeding, exhausted, pinned. For every breath they took, another scream echoed from below. Terran's world was flashes of white and red. She was running out of bullets and time. Her healing glow, once bright, pure, now sputtered like a dying flame beneath her skin. Every wound she sealed reopened twice as fast. The antlered beast lumbered toward her again, eyes glowing white, hide gleaming like living stone. She fired her pistols until they clicked dry, swapped mags, and fired again. The rounds sparked harmlessly against its mineral plating. "Come on," she whispered, stepping backward. A rodent darted in, claw slicing her calf. She kicked it away, dropped to one knee, and pressed her palm against the wound. Light spilled from her fingers, knitting skin and sealing fabric, but the effort left her dizzy. A shadow passed overhead. She looked up just in time to see a bird diving straight for her. She sidestepped, grabbed it mid-flight, and smashed it against the antlered beast's face. It staggered, roaring, shaking her loose. Her visor flickered, heart rate warning, stamina critical. Terran spat blood, reloaded again, and fired straight into the beast's eye. The round punched through, finally dropping it. She exhaled shakily, but the relief lasted half a second before two more creatures burst from the dust. Her hands trembled as she raised her weapons again. Bash, she breathed. What do we do? Bash ducked as another wave of rodents swarmed past his boots. His sidearm rattled in his hands. Every bullet seemed to do less than the one before it. The durability beast, the same one he'd killed twice, was charging again, white light BL, eating from the hole in its chest. He sidestepped, fired point blank into its throat, and kicked off the ground as it collapsed, only for two birds to dive at him simultaneously. One slammed into the shoulder, spinning him half around. The other clawed across his back, shredding what was left of his armor. He landed on his knees, rolled, and came up shooting. Both birds disintegrated. He breathed hard, scanning the haze. He grabbed a fallen knife from beside him, spun, and threw. It embedded in one beast's skull. He yanked it free, stabbed another, moved on. Across the crater, through the fog and the chaos, he caught sight of the predator again. Still watching, still perfectly calm. The comms were a wall of pain and static. Rixer's down. Terran, she's hit bad. The ore's bleeding out. Exclamation. Nair get back the sounds all blurred together. He turned slowly, taking in the battlefield. Every one of them was losing ground. His heart hammered. The air tasted of dust and iron. He could barely hear over the pounding in his ears. Then came the screams. All of them, at once. The noise shattered him. The light, the dust, the heat, it all fell away. He was standing in the burning street outside his home. The sky above was filled with fire. His mother's screams, his father's hand shoving him backward, the explosion tearing everything apart. Smoke, a smell of ash. He remembered the stillness that followed, the cold clarity as he stared at the ruin, too shocked to cry. He felt that same stillness now, the same breath held between one heartbeat and the next. He blinked, and TH, battlefield returned. The dust cleared enough for him to see them, Richter on his knees, hammer slipping from his grip, Terran crawling, reaching for a fallen pistol, Thor and Dark back to back, surrounded, Callan dragging Nair behind a rock, her arm limp. Not again. He wouldn't lose anyone else. Bash pushed himself upright, blood dripping down his arm. His vision tunneled, the world narrowed to a single point, the predator standing over its den, glowing eyes fixed on him. He reached down, fingers brushing the last knife on his belt. The steel felt warm, heavy, final. He looked at the battlefield one last time. Hold on, he whispered. He faced the predator, breath steadying. The durability beast roared, charging through the dirt, its massive frame shaking the ground. He didn't move. He waited. Each thundering step pounded through the soil. 30 meters, 20, 10. Dust blew past his face, stinging his eyes. He exhaled at the last heartbeat before impact. Bash pivoted. A single, fluid step behind the charging beast. The rush of air grazed his cheek as it thundered past, close enough for him to feel the chill radiating from its hide. The creature's bulk cut him from the predator's view, blocking the glowing white eyes for the first time. He moved with the cover of its motion, silent and precise, arm snapping forward the instant the beast's shadow passed. The knife left his hand like a whisper of steel, cutting through the dust toward the predator, unseen, untracked, hidden by the monster's own body. He turned with the movement, arm snapping forward. The knife fell, left his hand like a flash of light, spinning end over end, a silver line cutting through the haze. The durability beast plowed forward. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family, check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Brundock Chapter 62. Her pitch the durability beast thundered past, so close the air warped are. Hound it. Bash moved with it. Silent, deliberate. Slipping behind the lumbering masses, dust erupted around his boots. Everything slowed. The knife left his hand in perfect rotation, spinning end over end, each glint catching the pale light that filtered through the chaos. The world muted to a hum. Dust floated like ash in the air. He could hear every beat of his heart. The predator turned its head, eyes blazing white. The glow pulsed once, twice, as though aware of what was coming. The knife cut through the haze, trajectory flawless, headed straight for the skull. Then the air moved. Wings burst outward in a violent shimmer. A summon burned up from the den's mouth, cutting through the path of the blade. Bash's muscles tensed. He could see it, the moment of interception approaching. One heartbeat at a time, his eyes met the predator's across the field, white light against human resolve. The thing was mocking him. He knew it. Waiting 1 meter from impact. Bash shifted his focus, wrist flicking almost imperceptibly. His mother's signature throw, the phantom throw she drilled into him 1,000 times before she died. The knife dipped at the final instant, sliding under the bird's wingspan. It hit home. Razor vein buried itself to the hilt in the predator's chest. A flash, not of light, but of silence. Then the glow in its eyes flickered once and died. The bow fell still. Every summoned creature froze where it stood, white eyes dimming, collapsing mid-motion. Rodents hit the ground in thuds. Birds dropped from the air. The durability beast fell forward lifeless egg, and with a deep, final tremor, the world went quiet. Then came the shock. Energy exploded through Bash's body, hurling him backward like he'd been struck by lightning. His limbs seized, every nerve on fire, muscles locking as a surge of white heat ran up his spine. He hit the ground hard, convulsing. The beast's essence linked pulse once more before fading. He lay there twitching, breath gone, chest heaving like he'd been drowned. His eyes rolled, vision flashing between black and static gray. No one saw. His team was still under cover, each half buried beneath the chaos the summoner had unleashed. SC's voice crackled faintly in his mind, confirmed Tier 2 greater energy absorption. No ability unlocked detected. He coughed, voice hoarse. Then give me something good. A pause. Then, flatly, you're all still alive. Minutes, but felt like hours, passed before the sound of movement returned. Leora was first to stir, dragging herself upright with one broken blade still clutched in her hand. Blood streaked her face. Dark was beside her, staggering to his knees, his arm hanging uselessly at his side. They stumbled toward Rixer, who was sprawled across the dirt, armor shredded, hammer still gripped tight. He groaned when they reached him, forcing a grin through split lips. I'm too stubborn to die, he rasped. Across the crater, Terran was a bloody mess, her fatigues in tatters, one arm slick with blood from shoulder to wrist. She was kneeling, trembling, hands glowing weakly as she sealed a wound across her ribs. Each burst of light flickered, unstable, but enough to stop the bleeding. Callan was lying across Naira, shielding her with his own body. His back looked like it had been clawed open, flesh exposed through shredded fabric. She was unconscious, breathing shallow. The faint hum of her rifle, still active beside her, buzzed low in the dirt. Bash rolled onto his side, forcing his lungs to pull in air. Every movement sent a ripple of pain through his chest. He blinked through the dust until his vision sharpened. Everyone was alive. Barely, he pushed himself up, staggering to his feet. SE murmured softly in his head. Energy field collapsed. All summons inactive. You neutralized the controller. Yeah, he muttered. Felt that. He looked around. The den entrance now quiet. The battlefield littered with broken forms of creatures that should never or have existed twice. Team status, he rasped. Rixer lifted his head. Standing. Kind of. Leora grunted. Leaning, Dark managed a thumbs up. Terran raised a blood-covered hand. Alive. Callan's voice came from across the crater, rough and hoarse. Define alive. Naira's still breathing, so I'll count that as a win. Bash exhaled slowly, relief cutting through the fatigue. Good enough. He checked his wrist display 2.85/3.00 days. About 3 hours left, he said. Portal's 30 minutes away if we move slow. No one answered. They didn't need to. The way they looked said everything. Drained, battered, but unwilling to quit now. Bash walked toward the fallen predator. 3 beasts lay before it, each with one of his throwing knives embedded in them, and another glinted on the GR. Out between them, he bent to retrieve each one, wiping the blood off the steel, sliding them back into his belt with the same reverence someone might give to a relic. The last knife still jutted from the predator's chest. He yanked it free, twisting slightly, then crouched down beside the corpse. The thing's eyes, once white with power, shimmered faintly now. Not light, but energy still leaking from within. He pulled his dagger and cut them out, one by one, small glowing orbs the size of his thumb, pulsing faintly in his palm. Behind him, Rixer groaned. I'm too tired to be disgusted. Bash didn't look back. I'm too tired to care. He slipped the orbs into his pack. And that, he added, voice flat, was the hardest 300 points we've earned. He stood, turned toward the T. Everyone walking, nods all around. Even Taryn, half lumped against a rock, lifted her chin in weary confirmation. SC spoke quietly. You've earned more than 300 points. Bash frowned. What do you mean? The beast fragments from every construct are intact. He looked back at his team. Every one of those fragments still counts. I'll harvest them. You all head back to the portal. Leora pushed herself upright, swaying. We'll help. Dark nodded. Yeah, might as well make it worth it. Richter laughed weakly. You're out of your mind if you think I'm watching you work while I sit. Callan groaned, pulling himself to his feet. Fine, but I'm moving slower than gravity. Nair stirred, one eye half open. If it gets us out of here faster, she croaked, I can sit and harvest. Taryn managed to faint. Bloody smile. Me too. They worked for over an hour in silence, their movement sluggish but deliberate. Richter and Callan hauled carcasses toward the open ground, piling rodents and rabbits in stacks. Nair and Taryn sat against the ridge, using knives to extract fragments, glowing crystalline slivers embedded just under the sternum of each beast. Their hands shook from exhaustion, but they didn't stop. Bash and the others moved through the field methodically. Every cut released a faint shimmer, small motes of light drifting up like fireflies before fading. The air smelled of dust and iron from the decaying essence. By the end of it, they'd recovered everything they could. One more durability beast, one more antler mineral, 163 lesser creative, res, and the predator itself. 166 fragments total for 467 points. Bash crouched, packing the last shard into his bag. SC, confirm count. Confirmed, all fragments active. Registration complete. He stood slowly, his knees trembling. Then we're done here. The walk back to the QTP was silent. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Their footsteps were uneven, some dragging, some limping. Bash carried Nair's rifle over his shoulder. Richter's hammer hung by its strap, scraping faintly against his thigh with each step. Taryn moved between Dark and Leora, one arm around each of them, using what little healing energy she had left to keep them moving. They reached the ridges the midday sun of Kalis shone. The portal shimmered faint blue in the distance, its surface rippling like calm water. Bash glanced at his watch. 2.98/3.00 days. About a half hour, he murmured. Let's end this. One by one, they stepped through. The world blinked out. Light, sound, gravity, all ripped away in a single breath. Darkness folded over them. Then came blinding brightness. They hit solid ground. The metallic platform beneath them hummed. The air felt sterile, heavy with recycled oxygen and machine noise. They were back inside the Ark. Jouk stood 10 meters away, his sharp silhouette framed by the chamber's white light. His expression shifted from inspection to alarm the moment he saw them. Healers. Now, energy surged through the air as the healers arrived. They didn't need tools, only their resonance. Hands lifted, light flared. Thread, S of blue, and gold essence arc from their palms, weaving across torn armor and shredded flesh. The hum that filled the space wasn't from machines but from power, measured, focused, alive. Wounds sealed, blood evaporated into soft mist, muscles knitted, breath steadied. Within 30 minutes, the team's groans gave way to silence, exhaustion replacing pain. Jouk approached, hands behind his back. His gaze swept over the group, equal parts pride and disbelief. These fragments, he said. Bash reached for his pack and held it out. The others followed. Jouk nodded once. Good. Then report to the Nexus. It's time for your debrief. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family, check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Brundock, Chapter 63. Half-truths. The corridor beyond the Ark's arrival bay felt longer than usual. Light hummed overhead in precise white strips, uniform and quiet, washing over walls that still carried faint scorch marks from transport resonance. 7 pairs of boots echoed an uneven rhythm, slower, heavier than when they'd first stepped into the portal 3 days earlier. No one towel. Ked for the first few minutes. The silence wasn't awkward. It was spent. Bash walked near the rear of the group, watching the way each of them moved. Taryn favored her right side. One hand pressed lightly against the tear along her sleeve where the fabric had tore through and the weave still faintly shimmered. Richter's fatigue jacket hung loose at one shoulder, the stabilizing threads dulled and flickering with intermittent color. Leora and Dark both looked half hollow, eyes unfocused, steps automatic. the kind of empty drift that comes when the fight ends but the body hasn't realized it yet. Callan kept a slow pace beside Naira, one arm ready at her elbow in case she stumbled. Ahead of them, Jouk led, same as always, posture straight, stride measured. When he finally spoke, his voice cut cleanly through the quiet. Report, team, injuries, essence unlocks, and target tight. Start with the final encounter. Rixer answered first, his tone low but clear. We hit a summoner, sir. Tier 2, right before extraction. Jouk stopped. The rest of the group halted behind him. A summoner, he said flatly. You're certain? Positive, Rixer replied. It pulled everything back into the fight. Even after we'd already killed them, whole field came alive again. Jouk's expression didn't change. He gave a single short nod. That explains your condition. He resumed walking, the team falling in behind him once more. Any essence unlocks? The question hung in the air for a moment. Callan glanced at Terran, then back down at the floor. Leora spoke first. 5 unlocks, sir. Terran healing, Rixer durability, Callan wind, dark and mineral. Jouk stopped walking. His gaze swept over the group, pausing on each of them in turn. 5 out of 7. A slow nod. That's well above standard. Most teams average less than half during a first live rotation. Rixer grunted, too tired to sound proud. Didn't feel standard, sir. Jouk almost smiled, almost. It never does. But you came back breathing and stronger than you left. That's what counts. He looked to Bash and Nair last. No unlocks from either of you? Bash met his eyes evenly. Not yet. Jouk's gaze narrowed slightly. What classifications did you encounter? Durability, speed, power, mineral, healing, water. When Bash paused, and summoner, Jouk let out a slow breath, almost a whistle. Then that explains it. You filed HD through more than a quarter of known affinity classes in 3 days, and most of the common ones at that. He straightened, a rare flicker of respect in his tone. 5 unlocks out of 7 under those conditions. Impressive work. Bash gave a faint nod. We got lucky. Luck doesn't survive tier 2s. Jouk replied. Skill does, and potential, still unspent. Let's see what the Nexus reads. Then he resumed walking. No lecture, no wasted breath, just acknowledgement in motion. The corridor curved gently, guiding them toward the central lift bank. The faint vibration of power conduits filled the air. Bash kept his eyes forward, but inside, Essie's voice whispered quietly. We need to decide how we're logging this. You mean how you're rewriting it? He thought back. Not rewriting, DR, iridizing the truth that matters. You didn't unlock anything. That's fact. The resonance fluctuations, the pulses, the partial absorptions, those will be filtered out. Data reads clean. You're sure the Nexus won't flag inconsistencies? Positive. My adjustments won't alter the energy totals, only interpretation weight. The logs will show negative absorption. Nothing unusual. Bash exhaled slowly through his nose, feeling the phantom echo behind his ribs. Half-truths, then. For now, SC confirmed, until I know how far I can manipulate without triggering a system audit. The lift doors opened with a pneumatic hiss. The group filed inside. No one spoke. The quiet hum of ascent filled the small space. Bash leaned against the wall, eyes half-lidded but alert. You're making this our priority, he reminded her silently. But I still need progress on the others. Sparta data on the Earth mission, map recovery, and any Nexus routing you can breach. I remember. But concealment first. Once I gauge the limits of my interference, I'll probe outward. The Nexus will notice anomalies before it notices missing data. I'll learn from this run. Fine, he thought, but don't overreach. I never do. The lift opened to the familiar antechamber outside the Nexus hall. The air smelled faintly of sterilized alloy. Jouk didn't slow down. The doors ahead parted automatically as he approached, revealing the circular chambers beyond. The Nexus room looked exactly as it had in the training room. Wide, pristine, sterile white walls etched with faint hexagonal patterns. 7 in bed, dead rings in the floor, each calibrated to a Sparta's individual resonance frequency. Lines of blue light trace the circuits between them like veins. Routine, nothing mystical, nothing different. Jouk stepped to the control dais on the outer rim. Positions, he said simply. The 7 took their places in silence. Movements stiff, but disciplined. Bash felt the subtle vibration beneath his boots as the Nexus core came online. The room filled with a soft hum, familiar, constant, almost comforting after everything else. He'd felt this exact rhythm dozens of times before during simulations, training evaluations. It was always the same. Light rose from the floor, bathing each of them in a soft glow. For 3 minutes, nothing changed except the faint pulsing underfoot as the system scanned. Ned every fragment, every thread of essence stored across their gear. No disorientation, no pressure shifts, just procedure. Then, one by one, the lights dimmed back to neutral. Jouk didn't check his wrist console. He didn't need to. Somewhere behind the wall, a soft chime indicated completion. He stood perfectly still, waiting until the tone faded before speaking. All right, you're clear. He turned slightly, addressing them without ceremony. You've got 6 hours. Clean up, get a proper meal. Be at the coordination facility for debrief at 1800. No congratulations. No reaction. Just the order. Yes, sir, Taryn managed quietly. Jouk gave a short nod. Dismissed. He turned and walked out of the chamber, the door sliding closed behind him. For a long moment, none of them moved. The only sound was the slow decline of the Nexus hum as it powered down. Richter finally broke the silence, voice hoarse. 6 hours, that's almost generous. Taryn chuckled weakly. I might actually eat something that doesn't come in a sealed packet. Callan nodded toward her with a faint grin. Try not to shoot it first. That got a few tired laughs, the kind that come more from habit than humor. Bash didn't join in, just adjusted the strap on his shoulder harness and started toward the door. Nayar's voice followed him softly. You think we did good? He didn't look back. We survived. That was all he said. The corridor outside was quiet. Their footsteps sounded smaller now, less like soldiers and more like survivors returning from something they hadn't fully processed yet. They lit naturally, a few heading toward the showers, others toward the cafeteria. Bash lingered at the corner, watching them go. For the first time in hours, his shoulders lowered slightly. You held the light together, he thought. Not a lie, SC replied. A selective report. The system believes what it needs to believe. And if someone audits deeper, they'll find a consistent pattern of failed absorptions. Nothing more. I mirrored the pulse signatures with background resonance from Richter's hammer. It masks your readings cleanly. Bash let out a quiet, humorless laugh. You sound proud of yourself. Efficient, not proud. He leaned against the wall for a moment, rubbing his temple. The ache behind his eyes hadn't faded since the battle, though it was duller now, more memory than pain. You said you'd start expanding once you see how the Nexus reacts. I will. Once log cycle. For now, eat, rest, let the system mark your vitals as recovered. And you? I'll observe. Down the hall, Taryn laughed, a real one this time, at something Richter said, the sound echoing faintly. For a moment, Bash let it ground him. The corridor lights flickered slightly as power rerouted to a nearby bay, the rhythmic hum returning to baseline. He pushed off the wall and started walking again, slow and steady toward the barracks wing. Every step felt heavier, but also, in a strange way, steadier. 3 days. That's all it had been. 3 days that felt like a lifetime. He passed through the final security gate leading back toward habitation, the motion sensors flashing blue to confirm identity. The guards barely looked up. Standard return procedure. Nothing special. He exhaled through his nose, almost a sigh, but not quite. Half-truths first, he repeated in his head. Then the rest. The door slid shut behind him, sealing out the corridor noise. For the first time since the summoner's den, Bash was surrounded by silence. He stood there for a few seconds, unmoving, letting the quiet settle like dust after a storm. His reflection stared back at him from the metallic wall. Same face, same scars, but something in his eyes had changed, a weight that wasn't entirely fatigue. He pushed off the wall, moving toward the dorm wing. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing the narrow row of bunks and storage lockers. He sat down on the edge of his bunk, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely together. Outside, the distant murmur of the arc continued, systems cycling, people talking. He stared at the floor, breathing slow and even. We're still in this, he thought. Yes, Essie answered softly. But now we choose what the world gets to see. Bash didn't answer. He leaned back against the wall, eyes closing for the first time since the fight. The hum of the ship was steady, predictable. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comment. T.S. If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family, check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Rundock Chapter 64, The Reckoning. The dorm lights were low, humming softly against the silence. The smell of sterilizing mist still lingered in the air, faintly metallic, clean, but cold. Taryn knelt beside Nayar's bunk, one hand pressed to her abdomen, the other bracing herself against the wall. A faint shimmer moved beneath her skin, the telltale sign of healing focus. Nayar's breathing had steadied, color returning to her face. Across the room, Richter leaned against his bunk, watching quietly. His own cuts and bruises had already faded. Taryn had taken care of him first, then herself. And no, only fatigue remained. Bash stood near the door, arms crossed, silent. "You're next," Taryn said, voice thin. Bash shook his head. "Everyone else first. You're already halfway sealed," she countered without looking up. "Exactly." His tone didn't change. "Finish the others." Taryn gave him a look, but said nothing. She focused again, the light in her palms flickering brighter as Naira exhaled a pain groan and then relaxed completely. The glow faded a few seconds later, leaving Taryn pale and trembling. Rixer pushed off the wall. "You're spent. Sit before you fall." She managed a half smile and muttered, "That's the plan." Naira stirred, eyes opening. "How's everyone?" "Alive," Bash said. "Mostly." She smiled faintly. "Good enough." Rixer clapped his hands once. "Then we eat before so. Mion heals me again. I don't think I can take any more care." That earned the first laugh of the day, weak, but real. They left the dorm together, Bash closing the door last. The cafeteria didn't look like the one they'd left 3 days earlier. The standard meal dispensers were gone, replaced by real serving lines. Actual plates, actual food, textured, seasoned, steaming. For the first time, the air smelled like something worth eating. They grabbed trays and found a table near the back. Taryn's hands shook slightly as she cut into her meal, though the color was coming back to her face. Rick had piled his plate high enough to draw a glance from Callan, who muttered, "You planning to hibernate?" "If it's offered," Rixer replied around a mouthful. They ate in relative silence for several minutes before Naira looked up. "You notice how many tables are half empty?" Everyone did. Where there should have been at least 2 dozen Novik squads, only a handful of full teams remained. Many tables had only 3 or 4 sitting together. A few had none. 17 lost, Taryn said quietly. I heard one of the medics talking. The group fell silent again. Rixer glanced around, eyes narrowing. Zhikov's team isn't here. Maybe they are still under evaluation. Leor offered. Bash cut a piece of protein from his plate but didn't eat it. "They're back. I saw their ID signatures in the Nexus stream." Naira looked at him. "You think they didn't make it?" "They made it," Bash said, his voice steady. "But not all of them." SC's voice flickered quietly in his mind, barely audible. We, 2 days in, encountered a volcanic swarm of Tier 2 flying core hounds. Overextended. 2 blues lost. Used their emergency beacon. Bash's jaw tightened slightly. Greed, not weakness. He exhaled slowly and let the thought fade before anyone could see that on his face. Taryn leaned back from her tray. "So who do we think took top score?" "Zhikov," Rixer said immediately. "Not anymore," Bash replied. That got their attention. He looked at them one by one. "You all saw the fragments we collected. If the Nexus counted the summoner and its summons, we're over 3,000. Callan frowned. "You're serious?" "Do the math." Leora murmured. 3,000, that should put us first. Rixer grinned. "We're getting upgrades then." Finally, Taryn gave him a small smile but didn't speak. "All right." S drifted toward Bash. "What about the summoner? You never told us how it ended." Everyone turned to him. Bash set his fork down, expression unreadable. "When you were down, I took cover behind the durability beast, waited until it charged past. It blocked the predator's line of sight. I threw my last knife. One of the summoned birds went for it, but it missed." Rixer blinked. "Missed?" Rixer's voice dropped. "So if it hadn't," Bash didn't finish the thought. He just shook his head. The table went quiet. Then Nair spoke, voice steady but softer than usual. "Call it luck if you want, but it wasn't luck. You acted. We're alive because of that." Bash looked at her, surprised by the certainty in her tone. Their eyes met briefly, something unspoken passing between them, before he gave a short nod. Taryn and Rixer exchanged knowing smirks. Leora elbowed Dark, who was trying and failing to hide his grin. Callan said nothing, but his jaw flexed once. When the meal ended, they rose together. No one felt hungry anymore. By the time they reached the coordination facility, it was nearing 1,800. Vash's team sat together, middle tier. The space was packed, the noise a low thrum of nervous energy and exhaustion. Then Jouk entered. The crowd went still. He stopped on the raised dais, hands behind his back, eyes sweeping the room. "Noviks," he began, his voice carrying without effort. "You've returned from your first full-cycle field deployment. 17 of your number did not." He let that sink in before continuing. "For those of you who stand here now, you've done more than suit. Our life, you've proven coordination, discipline, and control under pressure. And, as of this cycle, the results have been verified." A holographic display flickered to life behind him, listing the evaluation categories. Beast Fragment Accumulation Highest Tier Defeated Ability Unlock Percentage Survival and Injury Index Most Unique Encounter. The top 3 teams in each category will be recognized. Each will receive 1 to 3 selection credits, weapons or armor, based on placement. He paused, his gaze passing over the crowd. And for the primary contest, total Beast Fragment count, the top 3 teams will receive 10 selections each, unless a beacon was used. In that case, 1 selection per surviving member. He gestured, and the first rankings appeared. Third place, Unit 14 Delta, 1,912 fragments. Polite applause followed. Second place, Unit 03 Zeta, Zikov's team, 3,097 fragments. Due to emergency beacon deployment on day 2, only 4 members returned. Each will receive 1 selection. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Used their beacon? Cowards. They were winning until that swarm hit. Should have known Zikov would overextend. Even Bash felt the weight of that. Losing 2 blues was no small thing. As he whispered softly in his mind, they were going to surpass everyone by hundreds. Overconfidence accelerated their loss. Jouk's expression didn't change as the next result appeared. First place, Unit 09 Kappa. A pause. 3,118 fragments. The hall broke into a wave of applause. Ash's team didn't cheer. They just sat there, stunned. Exhaustion too deep for celebration. Jouk continued, his voice steady and measured, carrying through the hall with a weight of finality. Highest tier defeated, Unit 09 Kappa. Confirmed elimination of a Tier 2 greater. A low murmur rippled through the rows of Novex. Tier 2 greater. Someone whispered, heads turned toward the small cluster of Bash's team. 3 browns, 2 grays, 1 blue, and Bash, the nearly black-green. Only 7 of them, and everyone still standing. Jouk gave no pause. Highest unlock rate, Unit 09 Kappa. 5 of 7 members, 71%. The murmuring grew, disbelief spreading. 5? That's impossible. Luck had to be. No teams ever had more than half. Someone else hissed, 5 of C. Then, and they are not even all grays. Jouk let the whispers burn themselves out before continuing. Survival and Injury Index. Second place, Unit 09 Kappa. One of only 3 teams to return at full strength. More movement among the crowd. Some clapped quietly. Others exchanged knowing looks. Most teams had missing seats in their ranks. A few eyes lingered on the empty benches toward the back, spaces belonging to Zikov's team, the ones everyone had expected to win. Most unique encounter, Jouk said. Voice firm. Unit 09 Kappa. Summoner class entity confirmed. Gasps scattered the hall. Summoner. Has one ever showed up in a Tier 1 field? No wonder they look half dead. Jouk looked directly at them then. A rare, almost imperceptible trace of approval in his tone. 21 total elections, the highest in the cycle. The room erupted. A mix of applause, muttered disbelief, and the rustle of fatigues. Some teams leaned forward. Others simply stared. For the first time, Bash's group felt the weight of hundreds of eyes measuring them, not with resentment, but wary respect. Jouk waited until the sound began to fade. Then, with practiced neutrality, he continued. Then came the roll of the final honor. Jouk continued, unhurried. Zikov is hereby recognized as the only Novik in the cycle to achieve multiple ability unlocks, mineral and fire. An exceptional feat, even under loss. There were low, shifting murmurs. 2 abilities? Someone whispered. No one's done that in many cycles. Another voice cut in, sharper. Yeah, but it cost them half their team. Bash caught at the glances being exchanged, respect and pity in equal measure. Zikov's empty benches said enough. Jouk ignored it. His gaze swept the room once more. Unit 09 Kappa approached the armory tables. The team rose. Every step toward the long tables felt heavier under the collective stare of the hall. Hundreds of eyes, hundreds of unspoken questions. The air was thick with curiosity and envy. As Bash reached the front beside Terran, he again caught fragments of conversation from the rows behind. That dark one, such a dark green. 3 browns in a record-setting team. Impossible. 5 unlocked. That's not luck. That's something else. They stopped before Jouk, who gave a single nod of acknowledgement. Select wisely, he said. Your choices will define your futures. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family, check out my book before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Run. Chapter 65. The Armory of Becoming. The armory stretched out like a metallic labyrinth. Long tables covered in weapons, armor, and tech that hummed faintly with resonance energy. Each piece shimmered under the pale white lights, and every hum or flicker tugged at Naira's focus. The others spread out instinctively, drawn to whatever caught their eyes, but she stayed near the periphery, scanning everything first. That's how she worked. Observe, calculate, move. Her rifle hung at her side, immaculate as the day she'd received it. The frame barely showed a scuff from the portal run. Its systems hummed perfectly in sync with her resonance. It wasn't weakness she felt when she thought back to the fight with the Windblast birds. It was precision envy. Even a weapon this refined couldn't compensate for distorted air currents and line-of-sight chaos. She didn't blame the rifle, she blamed herself. Every missed shot had been her own hesitation, her own failure to read the wind fast enough. A single fraction of deviation could cost someone's life. She brushed a hand along the first table, plasma rifles, beam cannons, long-range arc snipers. Too bulky, too reactive. Then she saw it, sleek, matte black, no wasted lines, a scope. The data slate beside it read, Singularity Aim. After 10 seconds of uninterrupted aim, resonance lock guarantees a strike through distance, cover, and obstruction. 10 seconds. An eternity under fire. Her lips tightened. If I'm holding aim that long, I'd better make it count. She fitted it into the rail of her rifle. The scope settled warm and true against the stock, weightless once mounted, its balance unchanged but its eyes razor sharp. As she looked through the reticle, her vision calmed. A thin holographic timer slid into the lower corner of her sight. 10 seconds. The targeting ray whispered into her vision like a second heartbeat. The entire world narrowed, clean lines, measured breath. For those 10 seconds, with the scope cradling her aim, she felt untouchable. A subtle smile crossed her face. You'll do. When she looked up again, Ash was across the room talking quietly to Rixer, and Taryn was kneeling beside a crate of healing devices. Everyone was in their element, but Nair wasn't thinking about them right now. She was thinking about the next time they'd walk into hell, and how she'd make sure the enemy never saw them coming. At the next table, something soft shimmered like moving glass. A translucent cloak rippled under the lights. The description caught her attention. Phantom Veil Cloak. Refractive mantle renders the user semi-invisible when stationary or moving slowly. Perfect for long-range synchronization or silent overwatch. She traced the hem of the cloak with her fingertips. The material was impossibly light, like mist woven into fabric. When she slipped it over her shoulders, the world bent around her, not gone, not invisible, but blurred, refracted, like a mirage on hot pavement. A predator in waiting. It was beautiful. Her voice was barely above a whisper. No more being a target. She folded it neatly and slung it over her arm before moving toward the accessory tables. Her boots thudded softly on the reinforced floor, a rhythmic counter to the chaos of thought still running in her head. Every mistake replayed itself. The missed shots in the storm, the bird's wings scattering her aim, Callan's cry when he was hit. She should have been faster. She should have seen them. She found herself in front of a table labeled Stability Enhancements. Rows of gloves, grips, recoil braces, and charge dampeners. But only one caught her attention. Tempest Grip Gauntlets stabilizes recoil and dampens resonance drift, maintains charge stability during sustained fire. She lifted the pair. They were heavier than they looked, thick around the wrists, lined with magnetic feedback coils. When she flexed her hands, they responded instantly, tuning to her resonance signature. Every movement was smoother, steadier. Even her breath felt controlled through the stabilizing loop. She imagined it. 10 seconds of charge, motionless under the phantom veil, the world frozen at the edge of her sights. She could see it, every shot true, every kill deliberate. The thought stirred something deep inside, calm, steady satisfaction. Bash's voice echoed faintly from across the room, giving quiet approval to Richter's choices. The team was starting to look alive again, but for Naira, it wasn't about looking alive. It was about being lethal. She slung the rifle over her shoulder, clipped the gauntlets to her belt, and turned toward the rest of her team. Richter gave her a nod, part respect, part warning. You planning to snipe the whole battlefield before we even get there? Naira's response was calm, almost cold. If I do it right, you won't have to lift your hammer. Richter grinned, shaking his head. Remind me not to get on your bad side. She didn't answer. Her focus was elsewhere, on the echo of the fight that still lingered in her mind, and the certainty that next time, none of them would bleed before she pulled the trigger. Taryn stood before the tables longer than the rest of them. Rows of gleaming armaments stretched under the pale arc lights. Rifles, racers, plated fabrics, all humming faintly with stored energy. The hum reminded her of heartbeats, steady and alive, and it made her chest tighten. She should have been proud. 5 out of 7 of them had unlocked new abilities. They had survived what most teams hadn't. But every time her gaze brushed across Richter's arm, the faint discoloration from the last wound she'd barely managed to close, or the pale blue lines tracing Naira's shoulder, guilt climbed back up her throat like smoke. Healing was supposed to prevent scars, not chase them after they'd formed. She rolled her shoulders, exhaled through her nose, and stepped forward. The first display table was stocked with light sidearms, compact, efficient, resonance link for burst casting, essence injectors, the tag read. She picked one up. It hummed softly, adjusting to her signature. The weapon's readout glowed faint amber. Essence injector sidearms converts minor damage output into passive regenerative feedback for nearby allies. Her lips parted slightly. Passive feedback. That meant she could heal while shooting. That's new, she murmured. She remembered the fight with the summoner, the blood, the exhaustion, the frantic way she'd been forcing essence through her hands when she was already nearly drained. If she could turn offense into healing, she wouldn't need to choose between protecting and fighting. It wasn't about redemption. It was efficiency, preventative medicine by suppression fire. She holstered the sidearm and moved to the next table, the one marked resonance amplifiers. Most were clunky, gauntlets and chest rigs meant for frontline use, but one piece stood apart, a slender bracer pulsed with quiet rhythm, silver veins of energy pulsing through transparent casing. The slate read, Hail Resonator Bracer, channels restorative essence through kinetic motion. Each movement increases regeneration within a 10-meter radius. Her brow furrowed. So the more I move, the faster they recover? The technician nearby nodded but didn't speak. Taryn slipped it onto her forearm. The bracer adjusted to her size instantly, cool against her skin. She took a slow breath and rotated her wrist. The faint tremor of healing resonance rippled outward like heat off pavement. Not overwhelming, but steady, reliable. That's what she needed to be, steady. She turned her attention toward armor next. Most of the team was already spread out. Richter trying on gauntlets that looked 2 sizes too small for his hands. Callan practically sprinting between the ranged weapon racks. Meyer already crouched over her new optics. Taryn wasn't looking for protection. She wanted connection, something that could stabilize the drain that always came when she tried to heal too fast. Her hand brushed against a vestment folded neatly over a glass stand. The resonance tag shimmered faint gold. Radiant Surge vestment. Convert surplus healing energy into brief buff. And Civ surges. Allow simultaneous regeneration and counter-strike bursts. She hesitated. It was risky, a delicate balance between healing and harming. Miscalculate, and she could burn out her own reserves. But the idea of standing idle again while her teammates bled out on the ground, that terrified her far more than the risk. She lifted the vestment and felt the faint pulse of energy resonate with her heartbeat. You're sure about that? Bash's voice came from behind her. He had that calm, grounding tone he always used, the kind that could pull the tension out of a room without trying. Taryn glanced back, half smiling. You ever been sure about anything in there? He smirked faintly. Point taken. She slung the vestment over her arm and looked back at the sidearm, the bracer, the fight, empty helm of healing light that danced along her skin. For the first time since they'd returned, she felt like she could breathe. If the next run was worse, and it would be, she'd be ready. She wouldn't just react, she'd prevent. Richter called across the room, laughing as he stomped into a new set of boots that made the floor vibrate. You done mothering us yet, Doc? Taryn shot him a glance that carried just enough bite to make him grin wider. Almost, she said. Next time, maybe I'll focus on keeping your big mouth shut first. The others laughed. The heaviness lifted for a moment, and for the first time since stepping out of that portal, Taryn didn't feel like she was trying to keep them alive. She felt like they were already living. Callan moved through the armory in measured silence, fingers trailing just above the tables as if tracing the memory of every battle they'd survived. Rows of weapons shimmered under the white light, humming faintly with resonance, each one alive, each one waiting for a claim. He stopped before the table marked Wind Resonance Constructs. The smell of polished alloy and crystalline resin reminded him of open air after a storm, sharp, clean, restless. Both lined the racks, but only one drew his attention, a matte silver frame with faint teal veins running along its limbs. The label read, Gale from Bow, generates infinite arrows from the user's own wind resonance with 0 essence cost, precision-based and silent. He hesitated, eyes narrowing. Infinite arrows. No resource drain. Pure synchronization. He lifted it carefully, the weapon respo, and dead instantly, a low hum filling the space around him. The drawstring formed itself from pure resonance, translucent, fluid, weightless. When he pulled, it felt like breathing. No resistance, no lag, only motion. The energy followed his rhythm, amplifying each micro-adjustment of his muscles. He let the string slip forward, and the resonance disperse with a whisper, leaving behind the faintest swirl of air. This one, he said softly to himself. This is freedom. But Callan wasn't satisfied with only the weapon. He wanted speed, not just in release, but in movement, in the seconds between decisions. He moved on to the next table, scanning rows of greaves. Some were heavy, built for endurance, others light, designed for scouts. Then his gaze locked on a pair that seemed to shimmer eye-captured sky. Swift greaves, increases movement plus 30%, grants perfect footing on air currents, and deflects 10% of incoming projectiles while sprinting. He crouched, touching the polished surface. A faint wind stirred under his fingertips. Perfect footing on air currents, he murmured, a grin flickering across his face. That wasn't a metaphor. It was literal. Air currents. He strapped them on. The metal shifted, adapting to his legs, light as woven cloth. When he stood, the room subtly changed, quieter, weightless. His steps no longer echoed. Even the slightest motion stirred the air around him, obedient to his balance. If the bow gave him endless ammunition, these greaves gave him endless motion. Still, he needed one more piece, something to tie it all together. He turned to it, already the accessories table, and paused before a sleek band marked with minimal etching, a single spiral engraved into its surface. Airstream Focus Band. Boosts resonance stability and draw speed plus 20%. Maintains wind flow consistency during rapid shots. He slid it onto his wrist. The world steadied, every breath synchronized with the invisible hum of the band. Each exhale aligned his focus. He drew the Galeform bow again, quicker this time, and the resonance stayed razor-sharp. No drag, no fluctuation. He imagined the next portal run, storming through open terrain, wind carving a path before him, each arrow flash of compressed air too fast to see. He wouldn't need to stop. He wouldn't need to aim twice. Karen passed nearby, watching him test the draw. You planning on shooting the air? It's off now, she teased. Maybe, he replied, eyes still fixed on the bow. If it gets in my way. Naira smirked from the next table. Just don't shoot faster than I can call targets. He chuckled, tried to keep up. He strapped the bow across his back and flexed his legs once more. The greaves responded instantly, lifting him half a step before gravity reclaimed him. For a brief second, he imagined fighting that way, sprinting across rooftops, firing 100 arrows in the space of 10 heartbeats, the wind bending to his will. He looked toward Bash across the room. The leader stood quietly, still scanning the equipment. Callan knew that look, already calculating every move, every weakness, every way the next fight might kill them. Callan tightened his grip on the bowstring. Not this T. Emet, he thought. The wind around him whispered its agreement. Dark stood before the weapon racks, jaw tight, fists flexing at his sides. The memory of his broken blade still gnawed at him, the sound of shattering steel echoing louder in his head than the beast's screams. Those swords had been his edge, his rhythm, his identity. Losing them felt like losing a piece of himself. He moved past rows of polearms, past the decorative weapons polished to perfection, until he found what he was looking for. Wait, the kind that promised finality, the kind that didn't just cut, but ended things. He gripped the handle of a cleaver displayed on a low rack. Its blade was thick, the metal dense with faint crystalline veins. A tag hung loosely from the pommel. Bedrock cleavers, devil's weapon den, city per swing. Each successful parry restores 2% HP as resonance feedback. He turned it over in his hands. The weapons weren't just heavy, they were alive. The resonance within it pulsed like a dormant heart waiting to be awakened. He gave it a light swing, and the air around him groaned. The impact sent a ripple through the ground beneath his boots. Finally, he muttered, almost under his breath, something that doesn't break when I hit back. He drew a longer breath, testing the weight again. Every movement felt right. The cleavers answered not to precision, but to intent. It was the kind of weapons that didn't ask permission to destroy. He swung again, this time with resonance flowing through his arms. The hum deepened, and when he stopped, the blade held that same weight, as if it wanted to keep going, to crush, to finish. He smiled. Yeah, he'll do. But raw power alone wasn't enough. He knew that now. The portal fight had shown him the truth. Every reckless swing meant another injury someone else had to heal. And though he wouldn't admit it out loud, Leora's glare during that battle had said everything she didn't have time to. He clenched his jaw and looked down the next row. The gleam of dark armor caught his eye. Sleek, segmented guards built not for protection, but for channeling energy. Obsidian edge guards infuses each strike with penetrating resonance to bypass lower-tier armor and shields. He slid one onto his forearm. It tightened automatically, metal shifting until it fit like a second skin. When he flexed, a faint red arc flared along the edge, sparking at the wrist. He threw a test punch. The energy left a smoky trail in the air. Yeah, he said under his breath. That'll make sure they feel it. He strapped the second guard on, rotating his wrists. The weight felt balanced, natural. The edges hummed faintly, synchronizing with his pulse. For a brief moment, he imagined the sound of those resonance arcs cutting through the swarm. No more blunt hits, no more wasted swings. He almost walked away then. Almost, but his reflection in the nearby mirror stopped him. The faint bruises still showing, the half-healed cuts from the last run. He wasn't invincible, no matter how much he wanted to be. Leora's voice echoed again in his memory. You can't just fight everything head-on. Dark. He frowned, then looked back over the table. Ease until he spotted it. A dark, earth-tone mantle folded neatly beside a row of plated armor. Tectonic mantle. Reinforced backplate granting 20% damage reduction while attacking and plus 25% quake impact radius. He picked it up, running his hand across the rough, mineral-lined surface. It wasn't elegant, but it radiated reliability. That mattered more. He slung it over his shoulders, fastening it tight. The mantle settled heavily, grounding him, not holding him back, but centering him. The faint hum of earthen resonance pulsed through his spine, and he exhaled slowly. All right, he said, voice low but firm. Now I'm ready to hit back. Across the room, Leora looked over from her station. Their eyes met briefly, hers calm, knowing, his defiant but grateful. He didn't say a word, but he smiled anyway, as if she understood. Richter called out from the next table. You done flexing, or should we move the armory before you swing those things? Dark grinned. You could try. He looked down at his reflection one last time. Cleavers at his sides, guards pulsing faint red, mantle heavy across his shoulders. The bitterness in his chest dulled to a slow, confident burn. Leora moved through the armory with quiet focus, eyes sweeping across each display table like she was reading a battlefield. Where the others were drawn to weapons that promised power, she was looking for control. Power was fleeting, but control decided who walked away. Her previous set of gear had done its job, but only barely. The antler beast had cracked through her armor more than once, and in the chaos with the summoner's horde, she'd felt her defense crumble faster than she could reinforce it. She remembered the weight of Dark slamming into her as he went down, the flash of panic that she couldn't hold the front long enough. Never again. She stopped at a stand of armor plates faintly glowing with resonance patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. The tag read, Echo Plate Armor, converts block hits into stored essence that releases as resonance bursts when charged. She brushed her fingers across the metal. The surface was smooth but carried a subtle vibration, not humming, but breathing. It reminded her of the heartbeat she'd felt sinking through her chest during combat, when instinct and resonance had merged into one. She slid the chest piece on, and it conformed ends, tangly to her frame. The weight distributed perfectly, each pulse of stored resonance harmonizing with her rhythm. She took a defensive stance, miming a block. The armor shivered faintly, a flash of light rippling outward like the echo of an impact. When she relaxed, the light folded back into the plating, storing the energy. Leora smiled slightly. Now that's more like it. She didn't need brute strength. She needed something that would punish anyone who thought a shield was only for defense. Her attention shifted to the next table, short blades laid in mirrored pairs, their edges thin as glass, each humming softly with pale blue resonance. The placard read, Fracture Wave Blades, dual short blades that emit resonance ripples on contact, reducing enemy defense 10% for 5S. She picked one up and gave it a light swing. The blade's vibration carried through her arm, singing with sharp precision. She pivoted, drawing a second one in her offhand. The air shimmered between them, the resonance waves intersecting in visible distortion. Perfect balance. Not meant for flourishes or wide sweeps, these were duelist weapons, surgical, efficient. Her lips curved faintly. You'll do. She gave a few test swings, light and fast, each motion syncing seamlessly with the pulse of her armor. She could feel the rhythm forming, block, absorb, counter, fracture. Every exchange would now end in her favor. Planning to outstyle the rest of us again? Dark called from across the room, his new cleavers glinting under the lights. Leora didn't look up. Someone has to make sure your mess says stay contained. He laughed. That armor's going to slow you down. She parried the jab with a dry tone. Maybe, but it'll still be standing when you're catching your breath. He opened his mouth to fire back, but she was already walking away, scanning for the last piece. It was tucked in the far corner of the display area, a layered cloak of matte silver fabric lined with mineral strands that glowed faintly under the light. Mineral Vanguard Mantle grants plus 15% damage resistance for 5S after each parry. reinforces counter-offensive strength. She ran her fingers along the inner seam. The texture was firm but flexible, the mineral threads interlaced like veins of stone. When she clasped it around her shoulders, a warmth spread across her back, the mantle's essence syncing with her own mineral affinity. Good, she murmured. You'll keep me steady. The resonance of all three items merged as she moved, a defensive pulse from the armor, the sharp etch from the blades, and the quiet fortification of the mantle grounding it all. She caught her reflection in the polished plating of a nearby rack. She didn't look heavier, but more anchored. Every line of her posture radiated precision, the stillness before the strike. Taryn passed by, pausing briefly. You look ready to level a fortress. The aura's smile was small but confident, just planning to make sure it doesn't fall on us first. She flexed her fingers around the hilts of the new blades, feeling the resonance settle into perfect harmony. Her armor pulsed faintly in response, as though agreeing with her resolve. Right. Zora walked through the armory, dragging his hand along the rows of hammers, mauls, and massive pole weapons, testing their heft just by touch. Most of them were good, some were even exceptional, but none of them felt right. He had come in ready to find something heavier, something that could crush through the next portal's beast like the earth itself splitting open. But the more he looked, the more his thoughts kept returning to the moment in the ravine when the horde of rodents and birds had swarmed him. He had swung until his arms burned, smashed dozens until he couldn't tell what he was hitting anymore, and still they came. By the end, his arms had been shaking, his breathing ragged, his weapon a blur he could barely hold upright. Strength hadn't failed him, endurance had. He stood, peeped in front of a display pedestal surrounded by reinforced plating. A single metal core rested on it, glowing deep orange-red like a smoldering heart. The placard beneath it read, Pulse of Endurance. Stores 10% of all damage dealt or absorbed as kinetic energy, max 400% base attack. Can be unleashed in a seismic burst. He leaned closer, frowning at the readout. So it saves the fight? He tapped the surface of the housing, and the core pulsed back once, steady, patient. He could feel it vibrate faintly through his fingertips, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Rixer's grin spread slowly. No, he muttered. It builds it. He picked it up and attached it to the harness mount at his chest. The energy synced immediately, a faint ripple running down both arms and into his core. That hum deepened as if the weapon he hadn't picked yet was already responding to the idea of it. This wasn't for hitting harder. This was for lasting longer, for never running out of swing. He turned next to the armor section. Heavy sets of plate and resonance-infused fabric lined the walls. He found one that caught his eye not because it looked imposing, but because it didn't flinch. Crimson Bastion plate converts 10% of dealt damage and 5% of absorbed damage into healing. Sustains wear in prolonged engagements. He brushed the crimson surface. The armor shimmered faintly, as if still hot from a forge. Every breath he took seemed to draw the hum closer to his chest, like it was syncing with his body's rhythm. He fitted the chest piece on, and the connection was immediate. He could feel it siphoning energy with each movement, storing and recycling it. Now that, he said with a deep, satisfied chuckle, is how you stay standing. The memory of that brutal portal run flickered again, dark bleeding out beside him, the oar pinned under debris, Bash shouting orders through the haze. Rixer hadn't gone down, but he'd been close. Too close. He wanted to make damn sure it never happened again. He started walking toward the exit when a glint of gray caught his attention. A set of heavy greaves displayed at knee height, the color dull and unpolished. Most would have overlooked them, but something about the understated build made him stop. Titanheart greaves prevents knockback, reduces area of effect damage by 30%, and grants plus 5% attack per successful block stack times 5. He knelt and ran his thumb across the surface. The metal didn't hum like the others. It rumbled. It was silent but carried the same deep vibration as distant thunder. He could already imagine standing his ground against a charge, and moving, unshaken. He strapped them on, each buckle sealing with a heavy click. When he rose, the weight didn't drag him down, it rooted him. He stomped once, the floor shuddered. Ha, he said with a grin. Yeah, that's more like it. A few of the others turned to look. Dark whistled low. Planning to fight or start earthquakes? Rixer smirked. Why not both? He gave the floor another test stomp and laughed when a thin crack spidered outward from his heel. This is it, he said under his breath. This is what it means to hold the line. He looked down at his assembled gear, crimson armor pulsing gently with recycled resonance, Titanheart greaves anchoring him to the ground like bedrock, and the pulse of endurance core glowing steadily at his chest. The trio of items felt like one organism, feeding and cycling through itself. He didn't need to move fast. He didn't need to dodge. He just needed to stand there and not fall. Everything else could break around him. He'd still be standing when it was over. Thank you for reading this chapter. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a thumbs up, leaving a positive review or a comment. It truly helps a debut author like myself. As this is my first novel, I am still learning, and I would love to hear your constructive feedback to help me improve. I'll do my best to reply to your comments. If you would like a better understanding of Bash's origin and family, check out my book Before the Genesis. It tells the story of Kyle and Abby and has some lead up right into this novel. Run Doc.